Hi friends, today we're looking at the Rebel, which is the fifth leader in the base game of Arcs. Rebel has two traits. The first trait is committed. In battle, you collect 2 extra dice. The second trait is disorganized. You cannot move more than 2 ships at a time. The Rebel starts with 2 resources, a material and a weapons. And then for setup, this is the most unique. For Rebel, you start with 1 starport in A and 4 ships. In B, you have no city and no starport, but 4 ships. And then C, you have 2 ships. What to say about Rebel? I think the first thing we can say is that the positive is definitely better than a negative, but it can be very context dependent for how much better it actually is. Not being able to move more than 2 ships at a time can be very, very brutal in the late game situations where you need to get to a certain player across the map to raid them or attack them to get trophies. And only having 2 ships per move can be really hard. At the same time, the committed trait for Rebel gives you 2 extra dice, and they don't have to be the same type. So you could do 2 skirmish and 2 assault. You could do all 4 raid. And that's just assuming you have 2 ships. If you have more ships, like 4 or 6, then you really can go at it with your dice choices. The material is very useful because you only start with 1 starport. It gives you flexibility on your second planet. You could do a second starport. You could do a city. You could just build on your first planet in A if you have a 2-planet slot there and not worry about your B slot and just move those ships somewhere else. So Rebel can be very flexible, but because of the disorganized trait, that flexibility is automatically limited and can be very tricky to get around. The weapons resource is very useful, particularly in the beginning of the game, to threaten or to just actively use to battle and raid or just get a lot of trophies against someone who's potentially going to win several ambitions, or to attack their cities if they're trying to go for a city spread strategy. You can use Rebel to really punish that. We have 5 lore cards we're going to touch on for Rebel. The first is Sprinter Drives. When you move fresh loyal ships, you may move any of them 1 more time. Damaged ships can move with them once, but won't move more than 1 time. You resolve this after all catapult moves. Sprinter Drivers, this is really useful lore card for Rebel, and it doesn't change the number of ships you can move, but it can help you get past blockades and gates or areas that are just tricky to get to quickly. Sprinter Drives can get your ships, even though it's just 2 at a time, where they need to be. The next card we're going to look at is Predictive Sensors. This card and Force Beams are both from the Leaders in Lore expansion pack. When defending in battle, before the attacker collects dice, you may move any number of fresh ships from systems adjacent to the battle system into it. This has a weird interaction with Rebel. What this effect does is that when you're defending, before the attacker collects dice, as the Rebel, you may move 2 ships from adjacent systems to the battle system to it. So if you're in a material planet and someone's attacking you there, and you have a ship on a relic planet nearby that's adjacent, and then 2 ships in the gate, you can choose to get 2 ships from the gate and 2 ships from the relic planet. But if, let's say, you had 4 ships in the gate and 3 ships in the relic planet, you could only pick 2 from each. Versus normally you can do all 8. But in this situation, it would only be 2 per system instead of, the 4 in the gate and the 3 in the relic. Next lore is Seeker Torpedoes. When attacking in battle, after rolling dice, you may re-roll up to 1 assault dice for each fresh loyal attacking ship. This is huge. Assault dice have 1 side that's blank, and they also have 1 side that has an intercept icon. Being able to re-roll either the blanks or the intercepts, particularly when you only have 2 or 3 ships, is crucial. And so you don't need to re-roll usually 1 or 2 dice when you use assault dice. And so this lore goes really great with Rebel. Force beams. This is a guide, which is a replacement for move. So anytime you have a move action, you can use this guide instead. And this says, move any number of any ships, even if not loyal, from a system with a fresh loyal starport to an adjacent system, or vice versa, ignoring move modifiers. So remember how we talked about the disorganized trait and how crippling it can be for the Rebel. Force beams gets you out of that. So remove any number of any ships from a system with a fresh loyal starport to an adjacent system, or vice versa. So there is an important caveat. So like you can have a bunch of ships in your starport and they can't catapult move with force beams. They just go to an adjacent system. But still, that can be very, very critical for you. If your neighbor decides to build next to you and you have force beams, you can either drag their ships to you or you can push all your ships to them. So with Rebel, force beams is definitely the lore I'm looking for. If I'm trying to get out of my disorganized trait, force beams is probably the best bet for me, just to have a more normal strategy, not having to worry about my restriction with my 2 ships limit. And finally, repair drones. After battle, as attacker, repair 1 loyal attacking ship. This is just a good staple for lore in general, and anytime you have an aggressive strategy, this is the lore you're wanting. And Rebel, because we get 2 extra dice, we're going to be wanting to do more fights. Just getting that free repair action every time we fight as an attacker can be really, really useful, particularly if we're using skirmish dice. So we shouldn't be getting any hits back when we use skirmish dice. So now we can just repair our fleet just by doing 2 or 3 attacks with skirmish dice. All right, let's look at a few guild cards, and we also have 1 Vox card here. Loyal Marines, Loyal Pilots. These are here for different reasons, but for Loyal Marines, this lets us use all our resources as weapons, and like we mentioned, Rebel is an aggressive leader. We want to be doing attacks. We get 2 extra dice, and so this lets us, even if we have no aggression cards in our hand, lets us use our resources to start making some good attacks. Loyal Pilots, similarly, our restriction is only 2 ships at a time, but if we can use some more resources, we can move 2 ships and then 2 more ships. And so we can just kind of have this caravan of ships going across the map, just with a couple of resources to get where we need to get, so that way we can roll 6 raid dice with 4 ships. That's ultimately what the goal would be by moving a bunch of ships, is that we can get 6 raid dice with just 4 ships. It's just we may need to do 2 moves to do that. Skirmishers. After you roll in battle, you may re-roll a number of skirmish dice up to your total weapon icons from resources and cards. And then Prelude, you may discard this to place 3 ships in a system you control. Skirmishers, and with all the weapon cards that allow you to discard to get 3 ships in a system you control, that's really useful. So if I have 2 ships, that will give me 5 ships. Now I have 7 dice I can roll. But particularly for skirmishers, this is useful just because we're going to be rolling want more dice than other people, and this allows us to re-roll either 1 just from this 1 card, or if we have weapons, we can get to roll 2. And so I think the average outcome is going to be pretty good. Mass Uprising. Choose a cluster on the map. You place 1 ship in each system of that cluster. Discard this card. Again, we are wanting ships. The downside to Mass Uprising for us is that we cannot easily move them together, but having just 1 ship in a system, that lets us roll 3 dice. And that can be very, very useful in a lot of different contexts. Even if we're raiding, just taking that chance of rolling 3 dice, hoping we don't get 2 self-hits, hoping we don't get an intercept. I mean, that may be what the risk we need to take is. But even if it's not, just the threat of using 3 skirmish dice or the threat of using 3 assault dice is very, very strong. And finally, probably the best card with Rebel is Gatekeepers. When you battle in a gate, you may collect 2 more dice. and then you may discard this to place 1 ship in each gate. I'm just going to tell you right now, having 2 ships roll 6 dice is crazy. There's no way around it. There's no mitigating the power of gatekeepers with Rebel. Even if you just avoid the gates, they can live in the gates and suppress your movement. A Rebel with gatekeepers is a bad time, and you want to get them to either discard it or just raid it away from them, because if you have ships, they're going to destroy them with just skirmish dice. If you have a city or starport somehow in a gate, they're going to raid it and enjoy it. It's not what you want. So if you're a Rebel and you see gatekeepers, find a way to get it, find a way to use it. And if you see gatekeepers and your opponent has Rebel, you should either convince the table to get it or away from the Rebel player or get it yourself, because this card is just nuts with the Rebel. So we covered the lore cards and the guild cards for Rebel. I just want to go back here and just touch on what does exactly 2 extra dice mean. It's hard to say when you take into factor the intercept odds on the assault dice or the raid dice, but ignoring those for a second, 2 extra dice for skirmish, that just means 1 extra ship hit. So if you're using 4 skirmish dice, that's 2 ship hits, versus just 2 dice would be just 1 ship hit on average. With assault dice, you're going from 2 expected ship hits with assault dice and 1 self hit to now you're expecting 4 5 ship hits and 2 self hits. So we're going up 2 to 3 more ship hits with the cost of just 1 more self hit. And then raid dice, we're going from expecting on average a building hit, a key, and a self hit. So now we're expecting 2 building hits, 2 to 3 keys, and 2 self hits. And again, we're not factoring in intercept odds with this, but that's kind of what Rebel can mean. It can really factor in with assault dice, gives you a lot more power. With raid dice, you have a lot more capability now of expecting more keys at the cost of more damage to your fleet. And even with skirmish dice, just going from the odds of a 25% chance of doing nothing to now you're at least going to probably get a ship damage, if not just taken out, just by rolling 4 dice, possibly 2. So what do we have to say about Rebel? I think Rebel can be very strong. However, just out of the box, not with a great lore, not with any guild cards, Rebel is a meh leader. It's very context dependent. I have Rebel firmly in the C tier. And again, it's not because he can't shine. He absolutely can. Rebel can definitely win you the game. But you need the right lore cards, and you definitely need the right guild cards. And those guild cards can be taken away from you. So with that in mind, I think Rebel is a C tier leader, and I'm excited to see what you guys think and what you guys can do with him on the table. Thanks.